Good afternoon, my lovely people. How are you doing? And how was your week? If it was anything like ours, then you probably came across a lot of interesting stories to discuss. And so this week on Deep Dive, as is always the case, we are going to talk about the most interesting, most amazing stories that happened during the week and that we picked up on and that we want to share with you. And the first one here would be this week, there was this thing called Technobrain. Now, I'm sure you know of Technobrain. They had applied for a tender with the World Bank, and it turns out that their tender was irregular and inconsistent, and they had pretended and faked some of the things that were in the contract. So they, along with Technobrain UAE, were debarred from the World Cup, from the World Bank. So now it seems like they cannot, at any rate, participate in anything related to the World Bank or the World Bank group of banks. So I'm just curious to know from my people here today, why is it that everybody keeps saying that this was just about time, that it was long overdue, and that Technobrain were definitely going to be in a hot soup? I'll have to start with you, Sid. You must have had something as a journalist. What would make you think that Techno are going to come to this end?
Okay, so first and foremost, I want to thank you for allowing me to bring in the aspect of being a journalist. Um, in this, especially in the midst of such such world-class tech gurus. So, um, from what I gathered, this actually started around last year, and I actually came across a scoop that Technobrain had some irregularities with the tenders they were doing. And so I went to their offices for a story, and I was just pushed aside. And I immediately knew that they're hiding something. So, with regards to time, I feel that this is long overdue. I feel that it's been coming for a while, and that it should have happened earlier. But well, at least it's happened when it should have happened. So yeah.
Ali, do you have any thoughts on this story? I know you do.
I'm I'm just curious about what CB had just said. He must have a very strong nose for these things. But I think for me, I wouldn't delve much about in terms of what happened. Uh, what I would like to maybe talk about is one, why did it happen? I mean, you're talking about, by all intents and purposes, a world-class organization. This is a company that has a Microsoft testing um, lab here in
Yeah,
Kenya.
yeah,
How does an organization of that level think that it can get away with stuff like that? Number one. Number two, I do not understand how you know, if you're in the tech space, there's this process of tender submissions, which has sort of been automated to a large extent. You know, you have a checklist, tick 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 tick. You know, you remove, uh, you take some stuff from a proposal you've done before and repurpose it, miss out some things, or miss out an old company that was there. It's called the classic um, um, boilerplate way of doing things. Number one, number two rather. So there could have been a genuine mistake. So I don't want to cast aspersions about an organization at that level. 'Cause I wasn't there. But I think the ramifications of that, when you're talking about the World Bank blacklisting you, what happens to all the other projects that they
yeah,
have won?
yeah.
What happens to the Microsoft testing lab that they already have? What are the ramifications of the professionals that are already working there? I mean, I cannot pretend uh, to envy the CEO and the board of Technobrain right now. It's a tough one. It's a really, really tough conversation. But let's, as we say in Kenya, iwe funzo kwa wengine, there are certain things you can do up to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
At a certain point, things will catch up with you. It's a very important lesson going forward on how we do things and how we do business. And especially in this day and age, where the news cycle is not a 24-hour news cycle anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tweet cycle. It's 1 second. Something horrible can happen to an organization, and 30, 40 years of work completely go down the drain. So we really have to be careful. The brand equity of an organization is not just about advertising. It's about how we do things on a daily basis. Those boring things, those putting papers together for a tender, those regulatory issues that, we tend to not pay attention to. Those are the things that come to catch up with us. And it can really mean the life and death of an organization. So this is a serious issue.
Well, it's interesting that they got caught for irregularities when it comes to tenders, and they have the most extensive anti-corruption policies as a company. And yet, here they are. Well, the other thing
that's
that...
the other thing, Carol. Like visioning and missions, just having an anti-corruption policy documented does not necessarily mean you're actually, that anti-corruption policy that was put in place in itself is probably ticking the box for tender somewhere. Do we really live it as an organization? Or is it just some documentation because it is required by the World Bank or by the government and stuff like that? We have to be very careful.
Okay, fair point. Fair point. Now we have a chatbot named Stacy. Stacy, she answers all your questions in the same way. You type in subscription, it tells you. You type in advertising, it lets you know. So now Stacy is like a level 1 chatbot. It can only give you automated answers. Then there is a level 2 chatbot that can give you answers, but they're not necessarily automated. And then there's a level 3 chatbot that can interact with the humans, and at the same time, it gives the agent information when the agent comes and it passes it on. So now the most reminiscent thing about this level 3 robot is one called Replica. Now Replica is a friend. It's a chatbot that becomes your best friend, your BFF. You can tell it everything. And the more you learn it, the more it learns you. So basically it becomes as sophisticated emotionally as you are. And so this reminds me of a movie, actually. There was a movie called Her, where the chatbot actually fell in love with the human. But now this is real life, and it looks like it's heading in the same direction. I'm just curious, are robots taking over the world? Ali, are robots are they coming for us?
This topic is super interesting because there are so many divergent thoughts around robots. I'm currently watching a very interesting series called Next, where this so-called super intelligent artificial intelligence. Now, I want us to stop for 1 minute and understand that we have started with artificial intelligence. Okay?
Yes.
We have, this is called AI, artificial intelligence, which means it was started by humans. Now, would there be a time where this intelligence becomes so super intelligent that it sort of continuously improves itself and surpasses the human intelligence? I don't have an answer to that. I don't even think the most interesting and the most talented AI guys actually have to that. But watching that series and having watched something else a few years back, I don't know whether you guys had watched Will Smith's Enemy of the State. So Enemy of the State was early 90s, and that was like super science fiction. I kid you not, everything in that movie now then is happening today. And at that time when we were watching it was like, wow, this is just super crazy. So is artificial intelligence gonna take over the world? I think these are not technology questions. These are policy and regulatory issues and ethical issues that as humans must start dealing with. And the big organizations like Microsoft, Google, Elon Musk's organizations are already starting to delve into these questions. Unfortunately, as is normally the case, governments are lagging behind. Policymakers are lagging behind in this conversation, and they need to come up to scratch and up to speed very, very quickly. We can't play catch up with artificial intelligence or any other super technologies that are being developed now. The scariest things are some of the anecdotes that you hear. A few back, the story goes that Facebook stopped an artificial intelligence program within their AI organization because at some point the developers realized that two computers were communicating with each other in a language that they didn't understand. So I'm not saying that whatever happened is, these are the anecdotes that are happening. How do you make sense? Do we ensure that we don't get to a point where machines take over the world? Is it possible? Your guess is as good as mine.
Sid, you always think the robots are going to take over, and it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, just to answer your question, yes, they are going to take over. But also, with regards to what Mr. Ali said about the Facebook AI that was talking to each other, I came across that story some time ago, and I found it extremely interesting that they couldn't narrow it down to what the computers were doing and the way in which they were working together. And so that actually gets me thinking to the point I'm about to say, is the fact that yes, AI and robotics and machine learning take over, but not in the aspects that the movies depict. It's just going to complement human activities in a way that allows us to not become overworked and stressed and burnt out. So it's like the AI will complement the human activities. And we often forget about the angle of the fact that AI can also, and chatbots in general, will also create new jobs, because we tend to think that once technology becomes smarter, then people will lose jobs. But we can also look at it from the point of view where we'll get new jobs and we'll have a whole new footprint as to the way in which technology can evolve and where it can go to and how it can assist in human operations.
Well, I think that the bots are already taking over some of people's jobs. And if a bot is going to take care of your job or take up your job, then you really need a different career.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they will become journalists. That much I'm sure. Well, just hold that
Hey,
thought. Everyone.
hey, Carol,
Yes,
let me just inform you. I think the Daily Mirror last month
yes,
had a
yes, I
had a
read it.
full.
I read the full article written by a robot. Yes.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. there will always be a place for humans. Because if we stop, if we stop having a place for humans, guess what? See, the world is over. So we are not discussing anything anyway. You know, the most critical thing that we must appreciate, obviously, is the fact that human evolution is getting to a point where we are getting more and more advanced. We are getting, look, I'll give you an example. We take these phones for granted. Earlier in my career, that's when I was a junior manager at Toyota, when I was working late 90s, the memory and the storage that is on this computer, this phone here right now, had to be fit into a computer the size of a whole room. You see Harry's office at CIO, that size,
Yeah.
multiply
Yeah.
that by 2. That computer was so big, and it did not have the computing power of my smartphone today. That's not 20 years ago. All right? And that thing was so big, it had to have a radiator to cool it.
Lord.
So, yeah. So, we continue to evolve. And the evolution in technology can either be good, it can be bad. It's up to us. It's not up to some machine somewhere. It's up to us, guys. We must ensure that there are safeguards where you are coding to the extent that the code now can record itself. You must ensure that you have safeguards, you have fallback positions and stuff like that. And these cannot be left to just techies. This has to be a conversation across multiple disciplines, policy, regulation, policing, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. There you have it. The robots are coming. Everybody beware. Well, we'll take a short break right now, then we'll come back with even more stories for you. So, Felix, take it away.
CIO East Africa welcomes you to the Cloud and Security Summit from 22nd to 23rd October. Join other IT professionals in discussing the future of cloud computing and how to use the cloud platform securely for your applications and storage. With more than 30 expected speakers, this is a must-attend event for CIOs, IT directors, CTOs, and other senior IT professionals. Register today at cio.co.ke and join the discussion brought to you by CIO East Africa and sponsored by Microsoft, IBM, ADC, Checkpoint, Sophos, VMware, Asset, MC3, and Manage Engine.
I have to say that video makes me rather anxious. I am not a water person. So when I see that person diving that deep, it gets to my nerves. So now, last week we mentioned CA and the findings that they had when they did their survey about Safaricom being a behemoth and being very dominant. Now, Safaricom are contributing about 6% of the GDP each year. They've employed over 1 million people. They have half of the diaspora remittances. But still, there is no one who's competing with them. And if you look at how they are making money, through Fuliza with over 200 billion shillings in the last, 3 months alone during the beginning of COVID, then it's very clear that Safaricom needs a competitor. So I'm beginning to wonder, should we just believe that we're a capitalist society and stay like that? Or do we actually need anti-competitive laws against Safaricom?
Can I jump in, Carol?
Yes, you can.
You know, you guys, just leave Safaricom alone. No, seriously. You know, Safaricom is a big shark in a small pond. You know, when we're talking about remittances. Um, Remittances is a $600 billion peer-to-peer transfer every year. $600 billion with fees of about $50 billion every year. Safaricom's share there is not even 0.001% of that remittance. In fact, I will go on a limb and say, let's look at it completely in a different way. Safaricom needs to be supported to compete on a global stage. And you guys, we keep on talking about Safaricom and Kenya. Come on, guys. I mean, Kenya is, look, I'm sorry to say, Kenya's GDP is not even a rounding error in Apple's balance sheet. What are we talking about? Can we just expand our minds beyond this small country that we call Kenya? And let us use companies like Safaricom, like Cellular, to jump frog into a world stage. You keep on fighting with small little tidbits here. What is Kenya's GDP? In the scheme of things, what is Kenya's GDP? Come on, guys, let's move on. Let's expand our conversation to the global stage. That's all I have to say.
So
As for Fuliza, how would Safaricom do it?
How would they make that leap from being local to being global?
They're already starting to make that leap. I mean, they're already starting to make that leap. Safaricom is in the process of creating M-Pesa Africa. All right? I mean, even Kenya, by the way, FYI, mobile money as prevalent as it is. Do you know that 85% of Kenyans still use cash? Cash.
Yeah.
So the likes of Airtel and Telcom and whoever else wants to jump into the bandwagon, everyone is going for the Safaricom share. That's 15%. Come on, man. Let's wake up. There's the 85%. There's the blue ocean. Even in this country. Yeah? Kila moja anang'ang'ania hiyo the Safaricom. Let's grow the cake. Let's grow the cake. Now, as far as regulatory issues are concerned, yeah, there are issues. There are issues everywhere. And I think the onus is not on Safaricom to play nice. Why do they want to play nice with the competitors? It's up to them. If I were Safaricom, for example, if I were M-Pesa, I would completely hive off M-Pesa from Safaricom. Create a new financial service rails that everybody can come in. De facto, Safaricom right now is the open banking platform in this country. De facto. Let's move it to the next level. But if they don't, let me assure you one thing, guys. There are some youngsters cooking up something, and you will be surprised in the next few years what happens. Let's not close this thing because we think it's big. Big in whose mind? Yeah? In whose mind? Yeah? Carol, over to you.
See, do you agree that we should leave Safaricom alone, that they're a big shark in a small pond where there aren't even fish with teeth?
Yeah, 100%. And their teeth are the size of like trees. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because also adding to what Mr. Ali said, because of the current situation with the pandemic and everything going on, M-Pesa and to an extent, even Safaricom have more of a platform to extend their reach. And it tells you that if they're thinking and if they're in the works of going global, then now is the time, and now is the platform. Now is when they can do that.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. And thank you guys for tuning in. Today we are keeping it short and sweet. And you've heard from us about Safaricom and Technobrain and the bot. So watch your back. Again, the bots are coming. And while you're at it, please go and get yourself a copy of CIO East Africa, their September-October issue. Yes, you have to read it. So get yourself one. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being there today. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. Bye.